The deed felt heavier than it should have, considering it only cost him $1. Nolan Briggs folded the yellowed paper and tucked it into his vest pocket, his calloused fingers brushing against the worn fabric. The clerk at the land office had looked at him like he'd lost his mind when he'd signed the papers. Maybe he had. A man pushing 35, buying a ranch nobody wanted for the price of a cheap whiskey. It didn't speak well of his judgment. But what else did he have left to lose? The wagon wheels creaked as his old mare, Buttercup, pulled them along the rutted trail. Each jolt sent pain through his back, reminding him of too many years breaking horses and mending fences. The landscape stretched out before him, endless and unforgiving sagebrush and dust, punctuated by the occasional twisted juniper. The kind of land that broke men's spirits before it broke their bodies. "Almost there, girl," he murmured to the horse, though he wasn't sure if he was reassuring her or himself. The sun hung low on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of rust and purple. According to the directions, the ranch should be just beyond the next ridge. The Double Cross Ranch, they'd called it. Previous owner had abandoned it 2 years ago, left in the middle of the night without explanation. Some said it was cursed. Others whispered about troubles with the local cattle baron, Jeremiah Boone. Nolan didn't believe in curses. As for trouble with powerful men, well, he'd dealt with that before. It was the other kind of trouble, the kind that came from inside a man's own home, that had driven him here. Margaret's face flashed in his mind, pretty and cold as porcelain. The way she'd looked at him when the doctor delivered the news. "What kind of man can't give his wife children?" she'd said, packing her things. "What kind of husband are you?" The kind that was now alone, apparently. The ranch came into view as they crested the hill, and Nolan pulled back on the reins. It was worse than he'd imagined. The main house listed to one side, its roof partially caved in. The barn door hung askew on rusted hinges. Fences lay in scattered pieces like broken teeth. But the well looked intact, and the stable appeared solid enough. A man could work with that. He unhitched Buttercup and led her to the stable, figuring he'd bed her down before exploring the house. The door protested as he pushed it open, hinges screaming like something in pain. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of old hay and something else, something that didn't belong. Fresh rope hung from one of the beams, still supple, not weathered like everything else. His hand went instinctively to the colt at his hip. "Hello?" His voice echoed in the dusty space. "Anyone here?" Silence. But as his eyes adjusted to the dim light, he noticed other signs. Empty food tins tucked behind a hay bale, too clean to have been there long, a water bucket, half full, fresh straw spread in one of the stalls, arranged like a crude bed. Someone had been living here, recently. Nolan moved deeper into the stable, his boots making soft sounds on the packed earth. That's when he heard it, a sharp intake of breath, quickly stifled. He froze. "I know you're there," he said, keeping his voice steady. "I'm not looking for trouble. This is my property now. Bought it fair and square." Nothing for a moment. Then, from the far stall, movement. A figure emerged slowly, hands visible but trembling. It was a girl. No, a young woman, though she couldn't have been more than 20. Her dress was torn at the hem, dust-covered and travel-worn. Dark hair hung in tangles around a face that might have been pretty if it weren't marked by exhaustion and fear. But it was her shape that made Nolan take a step back. She was pregnant, very pregnant. "Please," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not. I'll leave. Just give me until morning." Nolan kept his hand away from his gun, raising both palms to show he meant no harm. "Easy now. I'm not going to hurt you." She pressed herself against the stable wall. one protective hand over her swollen belly. In the fading light from the doorway, he could see the purple shadow of a bruise fading on her wrist. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. Mary Smith." A lie, obvious as the day was long. But Nolan had told his own share of lies. Sometimes they were all that kept a person safe. "All right, Mary, I'm Nolan Briggs. When's the last time you ate?" Her eyes darted to the empty tins. "Yesterday, maybe. Maybe the day before." "Christ," he muttered, then caught himself. "Pardon my language. Look, I've got supplies in the wagon. Nothing fancy, but it'll fill a stomach. You stay put." "I can't." "You can and you will. That baby needs food, even if you're too proud to take it." Something shifted in her expression at the mention of the child. She nodded, sinking down onto the straw. Nolan fetched his supplies: salt pork, hardtack, a few precious apples he'd bought in town. He had a fire going in the stable yard within minutes, using an old metal bucket as a makeshift stove. The girl, Mary, he reminded himself, watched from the doorway, swaying slightly on her feet. "Sit," he ordered, pointing to an overturned crate. "Before you fall over." She obeyed, moving carefully, one hand supporting her back. Up close, he could see she was younger than he'd first thought. 17, maybe 18. Too young to be alone and pregnant in the middle of nowhere. "How long have you been here?" he asked, slicing the salt pork. 3 days, maybe 4. I lose track." "And before that?" She looked away. "Does it matter?" "Suppose not." He handed her a plate, such as it was, hardtack soaked in pork grease, a slice of apple. She fell on it like she hadn't seen food in a week. Maybe she hadn't. While she ate, Nolan studied her without seeming to. Good quality dress beneath the dirt and tears. Soft hands that had never known hard labor. The kind of bearing that spoke of education, proper upbringing. This wasn't some farmer's daughter who'd gotten in trouble with a local boy. "They'll come looking," she said suddenly, as if reading his thoughts. "You should know that. They'll come. And they won't care that you bought this place." "Who's they?" She shook her head. "Please, the less you know, the less I can prepare for. Listen, Miss Mary. I've been in my share of scrapes. Can't help if I don't know what's coming." She set down the plate, wrapping her arms around herself despite the evening warmth. "My father is someone important. Someone who doesn't like scandals. And the baby's father," her voice cracked, "he's even more important. They want me to disappear. The baby, too. You disappear permanent-like?" The silence was answer enough. Nolan felt the familiar tightness in his chest. The same feeling he'd had the day he'd stood up to his own father, all those years ago. The day he'd decided that being a good man mattered more than being a comfortable one. "Well," he said finally, "they'll have to go through me first." She looked at him then, really looked at him. "You don't even know me, so why would you?" "Because a man who'd turn out a pregnant woman to face whatever's chasing her isn't much of a man at all. You'll stay here tonight, tomorrow. We'll figure out something better." "I can't pay you." "Didn't ask you to." She was quiet for a long moment, then so soft he almost missed it. "My name's not Mary. I didn't figure it was. It's Ivy Boone." The name hit him like a physical blow. Boone, as in Jeremiah Boone, who owned half the county and had a reputation for crushing anyone who crossed him. A man who'd started more than one range war and always came out on top. "Your father is probably having every man in 3 counties looking for me." She touched her belly again. "He'd rather see me dead than have this shame on his name." "And the father? He's got even more to lose." Nolan ran a hand through his hair, suddenly understanding why this ranch had sold for $1. It wasn't cursed, it was bait. Someone knew she'd been hiding here. Someone was hoping to draw her out. As if in answer to his thoughts, he heard it. Hoofbeats in the distance, not one horse, several. Ivy heard it too. The color drained from her face. They found me. Nolan stood checking his Colt. 6 bullets. He had a rifle in the wagon, but it was too far away now. The hoofbeats were getting closer. Get inside, he said, back of the stable, behind the hay. Don't come out no matter what you hear. You can't fight them all. Not planning to fight, planning to talk. Now go. She grabbed his arm as she passed. My father's foreman, Cyrus Thorne, he won't just talk. He's killed men for less than this. And then I guess we'll see who's faster. She disappeared into the shadows of the stable just as the riders crested the hill. 5 men, armed and dangerous looking in the dying light. Nolan stepped out to meet them, hands visible but ready. Sometimes a man found his courage in the strangest moments. Sometimes it took losing everything to realize what was worth fighting for. And sometimes, just sometimes, a dollar ranch came with more than broken fences and dusty dreams. It came with a chance to be the man he'd always wanted to be. The riders pulled up 20 feet away. Their leader, a scarred man with cold eyes, studying him. Evening, Nolan said, as casual as if they were meeting at Sunday service. The scarred man spit tobacco juice. You'd be the fool who bought this place. That's me, Nolan Briggs, and you'd be? In someone looking for lost property. Seen anyone pass through? Just bought the place today, haven't seen a soul. The man's eyes narrowed. That's so. Because someone's been living in that stable. Recent, like. Drifters, maybe, like I said, just got here. One of the other riders spoke up. Cyrus, we should check. So this was Cyrus Thorne, the killer. We'll check, Cyrus agreed. Boys, have a look around. The man won't mind, will you? It wasn't a question. Nolan's mind raced. 5 men, all armed. Ivy hidden in the stable, heavily pregnant. No good options. Actually, Nolan said, I do mind. This is private property. You want to search it. Come back with the sheriff and a warrant? Cyrus laughed, an ugly sound. Sheriff works for Mr. Boone. Friend. We are the warrant. Then I guess we have a problem. The tension stretched taut as fence wire. Nolan's hand hovered near his gun. 5 against 1. Bad odds. But he'd faced bad odds before. That's when he heard it. A sound from the stable, a gasp of pain, quickly stifled. Cyrus heard it too. His scarred face split into a grin. Well, well. Looks like our lost property found itself. Stay where you are, Nolan warned. Or what, you'll shoot? 1 gun against 5? Cyrus shook his head. You seem like a sensible man, Briggs. This ain't your fight. Girl's nothing to you. Walk away now, and we'll forget you were ever here. Can't do that. Did she tell you who she is, what she did? Told me enough. Did she tell you who planted that baby in her belly? Did she tell you the scandal she's bringing down on 2 important families? Cyrus leaned forward in his saddle. That child's a bastard that nobody wants. Better for everyone if it never draws breath. Another sound from the stable, stronger this time. A cry of pain that couldn't be hidden. She's in labor, Nolan said. For God's sake, man, she's having the baby. All the more reason to finish this quick. That's when Nolan knew there would be no talking, no reasoning. These men had come to kill and they wouldn't leave until the job was done. His hand found his gun. Then I guess you'll have to go through me. Cyrus sighed. Have it your way. The desert held its breath. Somewhere in the stable, a young woman cried out again. Somewhere above, the first stars began to appear. And Nolan Briggs, a man who'd thought he'd lost everything, discovered he still had something left to lose. Something worth fighting for. The standoff stretched like a taut rope, ready to snap at the slightest provocation. Cyrus Thorne's hand rested on his pistol, but he hadn't drawn yet. He was savoring this. Nolan realized. The man enjoyed the fear, the power, the moment before violence. Another cry from the stable pierced the evening air. Ivy's voice, raw with pain. "It sounds like she's having a hard time of it," Cyrus said conversationally. "Shame to let her suffer. We could make it quick, merciful, even." "Over my dead body," Nolan said. "That can be arranged." One of the riders, younger than the others with nervous eyes, shifted in his saddle. "Cyrus, maybe we should—" "Shut your mouth, Henderson. Mr. Boone gave orders." "To kill his own daughter?" Nolan kept his voice steady, though his heart hammered against his ribs. "That's what you're here for? To murder a girl and her baby?" "To clean up a mess," Cyrus corrected. "The girl made her choices. Spread her legs for a man who couldn't marry her. Now she's got to live with the consequences. Or not live, as the case may be." Nolan's jaw tightened. "Who's the father?" Cyrus laughed. "Now that's the question, isn't it? You'd never believe me if I told you. Let's just say he's got more to lose than old Jeremiah. Man with that much power can't have bastards running around claiming his name." Another scream from the stable, longer this time, edged with desperation. "Please," Nolan said, surprising himself with the word. "At least let me help her through the birth. Whatever happens after, at least give her that." "You a doctor?" "No, but I've delivered calves, foals. It's not so different." "Like hell it isn't." But Cyrus seemed to consider. "Tell you what, Briggs, and you go in there, help her birth that bastard. When it's done, you walk away. Leave the cleanup to us. Nobody has to know you were ever here." "And if I refuse?" "Then we shoot you first and her second. Either way, job gets done." The rider named Henderson spoke up again. "Cyrus, this ain't right. Killing a woman in childbirth." Cyrus turned in his saddle, and the young man flinched. "You got something more to say, boy?" "No, sir." Good. Because Mr. Boone doesn't pay us to have opinions. He pays us to solve problems." He turned back to Nolan. "What's it going to be, Briggs? You want to die for some girl you just met? Or you want to walk away and live?" Before Nolan could answer, the stable door burst open. Ivy stood there, clutching the doorframe, her face twisted in agony. Her dress was soaked with sweat, and blood stained her skirts. Something's wrong," she gasped. "The baby. It's not coming right." She saw the riders then, saw Cyrus, and her expression shifted from pain to terror. "No, no, please." Her knees buckled. Nolan moved without thinking, catching her before she hit the ground. She was burning with fever, her whole body trembling. "Please," she whispered, gripping his shirt. "Not my baby, Anna. Please don't let them—" "Shh," Nolan said. "I've got you." He looked up at Cyrus. "She needs help, real help. There's a midwife in town." "No town," Cyrus said. "No witnesses. And then she'll die." "That's the idea." Ivy moaned, her body convulsing with another contraction. Her fingernails dug into Nolan's arms hard enough to draw blood. "For God's sake," Henderson burst out. "We can't just watch her die like this. It ain't Christian." "Shut up, Henderson." "No, sir, I won't. I signed on to ride for Mr. Boone, not to murder women and babies, and this ain't what I—" The shot was loud in the evening stillness. Henderson toppled from his saddle, a dark stain spreading across his chest. His horse shied away from the body, whinnying in fear. Cyrus holstered his smoking gun. "Anyone else got opinions about what's Christian?" The other three riders sat stone still, faces carefully blank. "Didn't think so." Cyrus looked back at Nolan. "See what happens to men with conscience? Now, You going to help her birth that baby or not? Nolan's mind raced. Henderson's body lay still in the dust, blood pooling beneath him, a man dead for showing mercy. What chance did he have? But Ivy was dying in his arms. He could feel it in the way her breathing came shallow and quick, see it in the glassy sheen of her eyes. All right, he said, I'll help her, but I need supplies, clean water, cloths, a knife to cut the cord. You make do with what you've got. Nolan carried Ivy back into the stable, her weight nothing compared to the burden of what was coming. He laid her on the straw, trying to make her comfortable. Her hand found his, squeezing with surprising strength. My name, she whispered. My real name. I told you true. Ivy Boone. I know. The father. The father is... Save your strength. No, you should know, in case I don't. She drew a shuddering breath. Judge Hamilton Morrison, my father's friend, my mother's cousin by marriage. He forced himself on me at the harvest dance, said no one would believe me over him. Nolan felt sick. Morrison, he knew the name, federal judge, appointed by the president himself, a man who preached morality from the bench and apparently practiced something else entirely. He said he'd ruin father if I told, said he'd have our ranch seized, have father hanged for rustling. He had evidence. He said, fake, but who'd question a federal judge? Easy now, don't talk. I have to. Someone should know the truth. Tears streamed down her face. When I told him about the baby, he laughed, said I should get rid of it. When I refused, he told father I'd seduced him, that I was a harlot trying to trap him. Father believed him. Another contraction hit, and she screamed. Outside, Nolan heard Cyrus's voice. Better hurry up in there, Briggs, getting dark. We'd hate to have to come in after you. Nolan examined her as best he could, trying to remember everything he'd learned from years of animal husbandry. What he found made his heart sink. The baby was turned wrong. Breech. Maybe worse. Without proper help, both mother and child would die. Is my baby all right? Ivy asked between gasps. We're going to do our best. She saw through the lie. I'm dying, aren't I? No, you're not dying. I won't let you. You're a good man. Mr. Briggs. Better than I deserve. A hush now. He worked by feel and instinct, trying to turn the baby. Ivy's screams echoed off the stable walls. Blood. Too much blood. His hands were slick with it. Can't, Ivy gasped. Can't do this anymore. Yes, you can. You're stronger than you know. Why do you care? You don't even know me. Nolan met her eyes. Because someone should. Because you deserve better than dying in a stable while men wait outside to finish the job. Tell me something, she said. Tell me about yourself and give me something to hold on to. So while he worked, while she labored, he talked. Told her about his own failures, his own losses, about Margaret leaving, about the shame of being less than a whole man in the eyes of the world. Not whole? Ivy laughed, a broken sound. You're more man than any I've met. A whole man would have walked away. Let them have me. Then I guess we're both broken. Broken things can still be beautiful. The baby turned. Finally, blessedly, it turned. Ivy pushed with the last of her strength, her cries primal now, beyond thought or fear. I see the head, Nolan said. One more push, just one more. She bore down, and the baby slipped free into his hands. A girl, tiny and perfect and absolutely still. Is she? Ivy's voice was barely a whisper. Nolan cleared the baby's mouth, rubbed her back. Nothing. The infant was blue-tinged, lifeless. No, he muttered. No, damn it. He breathed into the tiny mouth, gentle puffs of air, rubbed the small chest, breathed again. Please, Ivy begged, please. And then, miracle of miracles, a cry, weak at first, then stronger. The baby's color changed from blue to pink, and she wailed with all the fury of the newly born. She's alive, Nolan said, wrapping the infant in his shirt. She's alive and she's perfect. He placed the baby on Ivy's chest. Mother and daughter looked at each other, and for a moment, the stable became a sacred place. She's beautiful, Ivy whispered. My beautiful girl. What will you name her? But Hope. Her name is Hope. From outside, Cyrus's voice cut through the moment. Time's up. Briggs, bring them out. Ivy clutched the baby tighter. They'll kill her. No, Nolan said. They won't. He checked his gun. 6 bullets. 4 men outside. Bad odds. But he'd faced worse. And now he had something to fight for. Can you stand? I think so. He helped her to her feet, supporting her weight. She was weak, trembling, but determination blazed in her eyes. Whatever happens, she said, thank you for giving her a chance. Thank me when we're all safe. They emerged from the stable, Ivy leaning heavily on Nolan, the baby quiet in her arms. The riders had dismounted, forming a semicircle. Henderson's body lay where it had fallen, a stark reminder of Cyrus's ruthlessness. Well, well, Cyrus said on mother and child, how touching. It's done, Nolan said. The baby's born. Now ride away. Can't do that. Orders are orders. Whose orders, Morrison's? Cyrus's eyes narrowed. She told you. She told me everything. How a federal judge forced himself on a girl young enough to be his daughter. How he's willing to commit murder to cover his crimes. 8 words of a desperate woman. Who'd believe her? I would, said a new voice. Everyone turned. A rider approached through the gathering darkness, moving slow and steady. As he drew closer, Nolan recognized him. Tom Baker, the territorial marshal, an honest lawman, one of the few not in Boone's pocket. Evening, Cyrus, Baker said, reining up. Interesting gathering you've got here. This is private business, Marshal, no concern of yours. But murder's always my concern, especially when it involves young women and babies. We haven't murdered anyone. Baker looked pointedly at Henderson's body. That's so? He drew first. Funny, his gun still holstered. Cyrus's hand moved toward his weapon. You're overstepping, Baker. Am I? The marshal shifted, his coat falling open to reveal the badge on his vest. Because from where I sit, I see a group of armed men threatening a new mother and her child. That's the kind of thing that gets a man hanged. You don't understand the situation. Then explain it to me. Cyrus glanced at his men, calculating odds. The marshal was known to be fast, and now they'd have to fight on 2 fronts. The girl's a runaway, Cyrus said finally. Her father wants her home. That true, miss? Baker asked Ivy directly. You running from your father? Ivy straightened, finding strength from somewhere deep inside. I'm running from men who want to kill me and my baby. Men sent by my father and Judge Morrison. Baker's expression darkened. Morrison? What's he got to do with this? He's Hope's father, Ivy said clearly. He forced himself on me, and now he wants to erase the evidence. Lying whore, Cyrus spat. The marshal's hand moved to his gun. Watch your mouth, Thorne. Lady's been through enough without your disrespect. You take her word over a federal judge? I'd take her word over yours any day of the week. The tension ratcheted up another notch. 4 men, plus Nolan and the marshal. Better odds. But Ivy could barely stand, and the baby was exposed, vulnerable. That's when they heard it. More hoofbeats, a lot more. Cyrus smiled. That'd be Mr. Boone now. Come to collect his property personal-like. The thunder of approaching hooves grew louder, and soon a dozen riders crested the hill. At their head rode Jeremiah Boone himself, a man who'd carved an empire from the harsh territory through will and ruthlessness. Even in the failing light, his presence commanded attention, silver-haired, straight-backed, with eyes like chips of granite. But it was the man riding beside him that made Nolan's blood run cold. Judge Hamilton Morrison, dressed in his traveling clothes, looked every inch the respectable federal official. 50 years old, distinguished, with the kind of face that inspired trust from juries and fear from defendants. "Marshal Baker," Boone said, reining up. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Mr. Boone, Judge Morrison." Baker touched his hat brim. "Seems we've got ourselves a situation." Morrison's eyes found Ivy, and his expression hardened. "Indeed we do. This young woman has been spreading vicious lies about me. I've come to see justice done." "Justice?" Ivy's voice cracked. "Is that what you call it?" "Be careful, girl," Morrison warned. "Slander is a serious crime." "So is what you did to me." The baby stirred in her arms, letting out a small cry. Morrison's jaw tightened at the sound. "Mr. Briggs," Boone said, ignoring his daughter entirely. "You've involved yourself in a family matter. I'm willing to overlook your interference if you step aside now." "I can't do that, sir." "You'd die for a girl you don't know?" "I'd die for what's right." Boone studied him for a long moment. "You're the one bought this place. Used to belong to Morrison's nephew." "Convenient," Baker observed. "Almost like someone knew Miss Boone would come here." "Are you implying something, Marshal?" Morrison's voice carried the weight of his office. "Just noting coincidences, Your Honor." Cyrus grew impatient. "Enough talk, Mr. Boone. Give the word and we'll finish this." "And I'll arrest every man who draws a gun," Baker said calmly. "That includes you, Cyrus. 1 marshal against 15 men. 1 marshal upholding the law. You kill me, and every lawman in the territory will hunt you down." "That what you want, Mr. Boone? To spend the rest of your life running?" Boone's expression remained stone. "My daughter has shamed our family when she's no longer my concern." "Father, please." Tears ran down Ivy's face. "I know you're angry, but Hope, your granddaughter, she's innocent." "There is no granddaughter. There's only a bastard that shouldn't exist." "Harsh words from a grandfather," Baker said. "I have no granddaughter." Boone repeated, "My daughter died the day she chose to become a whore." Ivy flinched as if slapped. Nolan felt her sway and tightened his grip. "She was assaulted," Nolan said loudly. "At the harvest dance, Morrison forced himself on her." "Lies," Morrison said smoothly. "The girl pursued me relentlessly. When I rebuffed her advances, she concocted this story. It's a common tale, a young woman trying to trap a man of means." "You bastard," Ivy whispered. "See?" Morrison gestured. "Such language from a supposed victim. Marshal, I demand you arrest this woman for slander and attempted extortion." "Interesting," Baker said. "You want me to arrest a woman who just gave birth? Tell me, Your Honor, why are you here? Why would a federal judge ride out to a nowhere ranch over a case of supposed slander?" Morrison's composure cracked slightly. "To protect my reputation." "By having her killed?" "Nobody said anything about killing," Boone interjected. "We're here to bring my daughter home." "Against her will?" "She's not in her right mind. The birth has made her hysterical." "I'm not hysterical," Ivy said, finding her voice. "I'm telling the truth. Hamilton Morrison attacked me in the garden during the dance. He put his hand over my mouth so no one would hear me scream. He said I'd been tempting him all evening, that it was my fault for wearing mother's pearl necklace." "Delusions," Morrison said, but sweat beaded on his forehead. He smelled of whiskey and cigars. He had a fresh cut on his left hand from opening a champagne bottle. Is it still there, Judge? The scar? Morrison's left hand clenched involuntarily. When I told him I was with child, he gave me money to take care of it. When I refused, he told father I'd seduced him. Enough, Boone roared. I won't listen to these lies. What if they're not lies? Baker asked quietly. What if your daughter's telling the truth? She's not. How can you be so sure? Because Hamilton Morrison is a good man, a moral man. He wouldn't he? A new voice spoke from among Boone's riders. One of them pushed back his hat, revealing a weathered face. Sorry, boss, but I can't keep quiet no more. Cyrus turned. Murphy, what the hell are you doing? What I should have done months ago. The man called Murphy looked at Boone. I was working security at the harvest dance. Mr. Boone, I saw the judge follow your daughter into the garden, saw him come back with scratches on his face, his shirt untucked, and I saw your girl stumble out later, her dress torn, crying. You're fired, Boone said coldly. Expected as much. Murphy dismounted, moving to stand with Baker. But I'll testify to what I saw if it comes to that. Your word against a federal judge. Morrison laughed, but it sounded forced. No one will believe you. Maybe not, Baker said, but they might believe this. He pulled a paper from his coat. Affidavit from Mrs. Sarah Morrison, your wife, Judge. Morrison went white. What? She came to my office last week. Said her conscience wouldn't let her stay quiet. Seems you confessed to her when you were drunk. Begged her forgiveness. She's prepared to testify. She wouldn't dare. Woman scorned and all that, Baker said mildly. Turns out she's tired of your wandering hands. Miss Boone wasn't the first, was she? The night had grown full dark now, torches flickering in the wind. Hope began to cry in earnest, the sound piercing in the tense silence. None of this matters, Cyrus said. Mr. Boone gave orders. Stand down, Cyrus, Boone said quietly. Sir? I said stand down. The old man seemed to age 10 years in that moment. Is it true, Hamilton? Did you force yourself on my daughter? Jeremiah, you can't believe. Answer me. Morrison straightened, trying to reclaim his authority. Even if something happened, it was consensual. The girl was willing. She was 17, Nolan said, and you were a guest in her father's house. These things happen. Boone dismounted slowly, like a man in a dream. He walked to where Ivy stood, looking at her properly for the first time. I called you a liar, he said. Called you worse. I chose to believe him over my own blood. Father! Let me see her. The baby. Ivy hesitated, then held out hope. Boone took his granddaughter with careful hands, studying the tiny face. She has your mother's nose, he said wonderingly, and her chin. I named her Hope. Your mother would have liked that. He handed the baby back, then turned to Morrison. You destroyed my daughter. You made me turn against my own child. Jeremiah, be reasonable. Boone's fist connected with Morrison's jaw, sending the judge tumbling from his horse. That's for Ivy. He kicked the fallen man in the ribs. That's for making me a fool. Mr. Boone, Baker warned, that's enough. Boone stepped back, breathing hard. Arrest him, Marshal. I'll testify too. You can't, Morrison gasped from the ground. I'm a federal judge. Not for long, Baker said, producing shackles. Hamilton Morrison, you're under arrest for assault and conspiracy to commit murder. This is ridiculous, Cyrus, do something. But Cyrus had seen which way the wind was blowing. He raised his hands. I just follow orders, Judge, and Mr. Boone signs my paycheck. As Baker hauled Morrison to his feet, Ivy swayed. The blood loss, the trauma, everything caught up with her at once. Nolan caught her as she fell, Hope still secure in her arms. "We need to get her inside," he said. "She's lost too much blood." Murphy," Boone barked. "You were a medic in the war, weren't you?" "Yes, sir." "Then help my daughter." They carried Ivy into the stable, Murphy taking charge with the efficiency of battlefield experience. He examined her quickly, his face grave. "She's torn up bad inside," he said. "Needs proper doctoring." "Town's too far," Nolan said. "She won't make it." "Then we do what we can here." Murphy started issuing orders. "Need hot water, clean cloth, whiskey for sterilizing, and someone who can stitch neat." "I can," one of Boone's men volunteered. "Used to be a tailor." The next hour passed in a blur of activity. Ivy drifted in and out of consciousness while Murphy worked. Nolan held Hope, the baby surprisingly calm in his arms. Boone paced like a caged animal, barking at anyone who moved too slowly. "Will she live?" he asked Murphy for the 10th time. "If infection doesn't set in, if the bleeding stops, if she's strong enough." Murphy wiped his bloody hands. "Lot of ifs." Outside, Baker had Morrison secured to a horse, ready for transport to jail. The judge had stopped protesting, seeming to shrink into himself as the reality of his situation sank in. "Judge Morrison," Baker called out, "anything you want to say for the record?" Morrison looked at the stable where his daughter lay fighting for her life. "Tell her. Tell her the child will be provided for. I'll sign whatever papers necessary." "A bit late for fatherly concern," Baker observed. "I never meant for it to go this far. Men like you never do." As Baker rode off with his prisoner, Cyrus approached Boone. "What do you want us to do, boss?" "Go home," Boone said tiredly. "All of you, except Murphy." "What about him?" Cyrus nodded toward Nolan. "He pulled a gun on us. He protected my daughter when I wouldn't. Man like that." Boone extended his hand to Nolan. "I owe you a debt. I didn't do it for you." "I know, that's why the debt stands." Boone looked at Hope, asleep in Nolan's arms. "You any good with children?" "Never had the chance to find out." "You're doing fine." Boone sighed. "I need someone here, someone to watch over them while Ivy recovers. The ranch is yours free and clear, but I'll pay you wages too. Keep them safe." "They'll be safe." "I believe you." Boone started to leave, then turned back. "I was wrong. About Ivy. About everything. Man gets so caught up in pride, in reputation. He forgets what matters. She's your daughter. She'll forgive you. Maybe, in time." Boone mounted his horse. "Take care of them, Briggs. They're all I've got left." As the riders disappeared into the night, Nolan stood alone with a baby in his arms and an unconscious woman he'd known less than a day. The smart thing would be to hand them over to Boone, collect his wages, and build his quiet life. But he'd never been smart about these things. He looked down at Hope, who'd wrapped one tiny fist around his finger. Such trust from something so small. In the stable, Ivy murmured in her fevered sleep, calling for her baby. "She's here," Nolan told her, settling beside her with Hope. "She's safe. You both are." Ivy's eyes fluttered open, focusing with effort. "You stayed. Where else would I go?" "Anywhere, away from this mess. Maybe I like messes." She almost smiled. "Thank you for everything, for believing me when my own father wouldn't. Rest now. Morning will come soon enough. Will you still be here when I wake?" "I'll be here." "Promise?" "I promise." She drifted off again, one hand reaching for Hope. Nolan placed the baby where she could feel her, keeping his own hand over both of theirs. Outside, coyotes howled in the distance. The wind rattled the stable walls. But inside, for now, they were safe. A broken man, a wounded woman, and a baby named Hope. It wasn't the life he'd planned when he'd bought a ranch for $1. But maybe, just maybe, it was the life he was meant to have. The next 3 days passed in a blur of fever and fear. Ivy burned hot as a branding iron, thrashing in delirium while Nolan and Murphy took turns cooling her with wet cloths and spooning water between her cracked lips. Hope cried constantly, hungry for milk her mother couldn't provide. "She needs a wet nurse," Murphy said on the second night, exhaustion etched in every line of his face. "Baby can't survive on sugar water much longer. Nearest town's a day's ride," Nolan replied, walking the floor with Hope against his shoulder. "Can't leave Ivy. And then the baby dies." "No." The word came out harsher than intended. "There has to be another way." Murphy rubbed his eyes. "Used to be a Mexican family, the Herreras, about 10 miles north. Had a passel of kids. Might be one of the women could help." "Might be?" "Haven't seen them in months. Boone's been pushing out the Mexican settlers, buying their land cheap or running them off. But they might still be there. Worth a try." Nolan looked at Ivy, so still except for the shallow rise and fall of her chest. "Can you manage alone?" "I'd done it before. Go, save the child." Nolan saddled Buttercup in the pre-dawn darkness, Hope wrapped tight against his chest in a makeshift sling. The baby had stopped crying, which worried him more than the noise. She felt too light, too fragile. "Hey, hold on, little one," he murmured as they set off. Just a little longer. The ride seemed endless. Every bump in the trail, every jostle made him fear for the infant. The sun climbed higher, baking the earth and sending up shimmers of heat that turned the landscape into a wavering dream. He almost missed the Herrera place, a small adobe structure nestled in a grove of cottonwoods. Smoke rose from the chimney. Someone was home. "Hola," he called out. "Anyone there? I need help." A woman emerged, middle-aged and wary, a rifle in her hands. Behind her, children peered from the doorway. "What do you want, Anglo?" "Please," Nolan said, unwrapping Hope enough for the woman to see. "The baby needs milk. Her mother's too sick. She'll die without help." The woman's expression softened. She lowered the rifle. "Bring her." Inside the small house, chaos reigned. Children of various ages filled every corner. But the woman, who introduced herself as Rosa Herrera, moved through them like a ship through water. She took Hope with practiced hands, clucking her tongue at the baby's condition. How long since she fed? 2 days, maybe more. "Ay, Dios mío," she called out in rapid Spanish, and a younger woman appeared, a baby of her own on her hip. More Spanish flew between them. Then the younger woman nodded and took Hope. "My daughter-in-law, Elena," Rosa explained. "She has milk enough for 2. Relief nearly buckled Nolan's knees as Hope latched on and began to feed. The baby's color improved almost immediately, her tiny fists kneading as she nursed. "Thank you," he said. "I'll pay whatever." "Hey, keep your money," Rosa bustled about, filling a basket with supplies. "But you tell me, this baby's mother, she is the Boone girl? The one who ran?" "How did you know?" "Everyone knows. My husband. He worked for Boone until the troubles started. Said the old man was like a wounded bear, lashing out at everyone." She paused. "Is it true? About the judge?" "It's true." Rosa spat. "Men of power, they think they can take whatever they want. Good you helped her." "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Rosa said firmly. "Most would turn away and pretend not to see. You stayed." When Hope finished feeding, Elena showed Nolan how to get her to burp, how to clean her properly. Rosa packed goat's milk in bottles, explaining how to keep it fresh. "Bring her back tomorrow," Rosa instructed. "And the next day until her mother is well." I don't know how to thank you. Then don't. Just remember when we needed help. Where was Boone? Where was the law? She touched Hope's cheek gently. We help each other, or we have nothing. The ride back seemed shorter, Hope content and sleeping against his chest. But as the ranch came into view, Nolan saw horses, too many horses. His hand went to his gun. Cyrus Thorne stood on the porch, Murphy on his knees in the dust, hands tied. 3 other men lounged nearby, rifles casual but ready. Well, well, Cyrus called out, the hero returns. Nolan reined up just out of easy rifle range. Thought Boone told you to leave this alone. Boone's gone soft, but Judge Morrison's got friends. Powerful friends who don't like seeing one of their own brought low by some whore's lies. Where's Ivy? Inside, don't worry, we haven't touched her yet. Cyrus smiled. See, we got a proposition. You hand over the baby. We let everyone live. Simple. Go to hell. Expected you'd say that. Cyrus nodded to one of his men who pressed a gun to Murphy's head. How about now? Murphy looked up, blood running from a cut on his forehead. Don't do it, Briggs. They'll kill us all anyway. Shut up. The gunman clubbed Murphy, dropping him to the dirt. Here's what's going to happen. Cyrus continued. You're going to bring that baby here, then you're going to ride away and forget you ever saw any of this. Morrison's friends will make it worth your while, $5,000. Enough to start over anywhere. And if I refuse, then we kill the medic, then you, then we take the baby anyway. The girl. Well, he shrugged. She's no use to anyone anymore. Might as well put her out of her misery. Hope stirred against Nolan's chest, making a small sound. Such a tiny thing to cause so much trouble. But she hadn't asked for any of this. Neither had Ivy. I need to think. Think fast. Sun's getting high. We'd like to finish this before it gets too hot. Nolan's mind raced. 4 men, all armed, Murphy down, Ivy helpless inside, no good options. That's when he saw it. Movement in the stable window. A flash of white. Ivy. Somehow, impossibly. She was up, moving. He caught a glimpse of her face, pale but determined. She held something, a rifle, probably his own from the wagon. All right, Nolan said loudly. You win. I'll bring the baby. He dismounted slowly, making a show of checking Hope, buying time. As he walked toward the house, he saw Ivy ease the stable door open. She was barefoot, nightgown stained with blood, swaying with each step, but the rifle was steady in her hands. That's far enough, Cyrus said when Nolan was 20 feet away. Put the baby on the ground and back off. She needs to be held. She'll cry. Let her cry. Nolan knelt, pretending to unwrap Hope. From the corner of his eye, he saw Ivy take position behind a water trough. She'd have a clear shot at 2 of the men. But could she do it? Could a woman who'd just given birth, who'd lost so much blood, make the shot? Hurry up, Cyrus snapped. The blanket's caught. Nolan fumbled with the fabric, stalling. There, just... The shot cracked like thunder. One of Cyrus's men spun and fell, clutching his shoulder. Before anyone could react, Ivy fired again, catching another in the leg. Nolan rolled, drawing his pistol as Cyrus dove for cover. The third man swung his rifle toward the stable, but Murphy, hands still tied, threw himself at the man's legs. They went down in a tangle of limbs. Here, you bitch, Cyrus fired at the water trough, splinters flying. I'll kill you. Nolan came up shooting, forcing Cyrus behind a wagon wheel. The wounded men were trying to crawl to cover, leaving blood trails in the dust. Give it up, Cyrus, Nolan called. You're outnumbered. Like hell. Another exchange of fire. Nolan counted shots. Cyrus had maybe 2 left but Ivy had gone quiet. Too quiet. "Ivy?" he called. No answer. Fear cold as mountain snow filled his chest. He started to rise, to go to her. When Cyrus made his move, the gunman burst from cover, running for his horse. Nolan's shot took him between the shoulder blades. Cyrus stumbled, fell, tried to crawl, then stillness. "Clear," Nolan called, but he was already running for the stable. He found Ivy slumped behind the trough, rifle fallen from nerveless fingers. Blood soaked through her nightgown, the wound reopened by exertion. "Did I get them?" she whispered. "You got them. You saved us all." "Good," she tried to smile. "Is hope?" "She's fine, fed and happy." He pressed his hands against the bleeding, trying to stem the flow. "Why did you get up? You could have—" He heard them talking, heard what they planned. She gripped his shirt weakly. "Couldn't let them take her. Not my baby." Murphy appeared, free of his bonds, already assessing the damage. "We need to get her inside, now." They carried her to the house, Murphy working with desperate efficiency. The other wounded men could wait. 2 of Cyrus's gang had survived, though they wouldn't be fighting anyone soon. "She's torn the stitches," Murphy muttered. "Lost more blood. I don't know if—" "Fix her," Nolan said. "Whatever it takes. I'm not a miracle worker." And then become one. Hours passed. Murphy stitched and bandaged while Nolan held Ivy's hand, talking to her, keeping her anchored to the world. He told her about the Herreras, about how hope had fed, about plans for the ranch when she was well. "When I'm well," she repeated like a prayer. Night fell. One of the wounded men, the one Ivy had shot in the shoulder, started talking. Seemed Judge Morrison had sent word from jail, calling in old favors. Cyrus had been promised $10,000 to eliminate all witnesses. "Won't work," the man gasped. "Too many people know now. Morrison's finished." "He should have stayed finished the first time," Murphy said, not looking up from his work. By dawn, the crisis had passed. Ivy's bleeding stopped, her breathing steadied. She would live, Murphy declared, if infection didn't set in. Always that if. Marshal Baker arrived at midday with a deputy and a wagon. He surveyed the carnage with professional interest. "Busy night?" "You could say that." Nolan explained what had happened while Baker took notes. "Self-defense, clear as day," the marshal concluded. "Though I am curious how Miss Boone managed to shoot 2 men while recovering from childbirth. She's stronger than she looks." "Apparently." Baker supervised loading the survivors into his wagon. "This makes 5 men willing to testify against Morrison. His high-powered friends are abandoning him like rats from a sinking ship." "Good. There'll be a trial. Miss Boone will need to testify. She'll be there." Baker paused at the door. "You did good, Briggs. Not many men would have stood their ground. I had help. Still," the marshal touched his hat, "take care of them." As the wagon rolled away, Nolan returned to Ivy's bedside. She was awake, holding hope while Elena helped her nurse. The sight, mother and child together, safe, made something tight in his chest finally ease. "I thank you," Ivy said when they were alone. "For everything. You're the one who saved us. That was some shooting." "Father insisted I learn. Said a woman alone needed to protect herself." Her smile was bitter. "Don't think he meant from his own men. He was wrong about a lot of things." "Yes." She looked down at Hope. "But not about everything. I made choices too. Went to that dance, wore that dress, danced with Morrison even though something felt wrong. That doesn't make it your fault." "No, but I need to own my part, however small. Otherwise, I'll always be a victim." Nolan understood. The need to find control in chaos, to assign meaning to meaningless cruelty. He'd done it himself after Margaret left. "What will you do now?" he asked. "When you're healed?" "I don't know. Father won't want me back, not really, and I can't live on charity forever." "It's not charity. I need help with the ranch. Someone who can keep books, manage supplies, work I can't do myself." She studied him. "Is that the only reason?" "No," he admitted, "but it's reason enough for now." "For now," she agreed. Outside, the sun climbed higher over the desert. Inside, a makeshift family began to form, built not on blood or obligation, but on the simple act of choosing to stay when leaving would have been easier. It wasn't the life any of them had planned, but sometimes the best things came from the worst circumstances. Sometimes broken people could build something whole. Sometimes a ranch bought for $1 could become a home. 2 weeks had passed since the shootout, and the ranch had settled into an uneasy peace. Ivy grew stronger each day, though she still moved carefully. One hand pressed to her side. Hope thrived on Elena's milk and the constant attention of her makeshift family. Nolan was mending the corral fence when he spotted the dust cloud on the horizon. His hand went instinctively to his gun, a habit now, but relaxed when he counted only 3 riders. They moved without urgency, like men on legitimate business. "Company coming," he called to Murphy, who was teaching Ivy to clean a rifle on the porch. She stood, shading her eyes. "I don't recognize the horses." As the riders drew closer, Nolan's stomach tightened. The man in the lead wore a federal marshal's badge, his companions bearing the unmistakable look of government men, clean-shaven, well-dressed, out of place in the rough territory. "Mr. Briggs," the marshal touched his hat brim. "I'm Federal Marshal William Cord. These gentlemen are from the prosecutor's office in Santa Fe. If you're looking for Miss Boone..." "We are, but not for the reasons you might think." Cord dismounted, his manner professional but not threatening. "May we speak with her?" Ivy stepped forward, hope in her arms. "I'm Ivy Boone." "Miss Boone." Cord removed his hat. "We need to discuss the trial. Judge Morrison's trial." One of the prosecutors, a thin man with spectacles, cleared his throat. "Perhaps we could speak inside. This is a delicate matter." They gathered in the small parlor, recently cleaned and made habitable. Ivy sat straight-backed, every inch her father's daughter despite her simple dress and healing body. "The trial is set for next month," Cord began. "Your testimony will be crucial." "I'll be there." "It's not that simple." The spectacled prosecutor, who'd introduced himself as James Harrington, pulled out a sheaf of papers. "Morrison has hired the best lawyers money can buy. They'll attack your character, your reputation, everything about you." "Let them." "Miss Boone, you don't understand. They'll paint you as a woman of loose morals who seduced the judge. They'll bring up every dance you attended, every young man you smiled at. They'll make your life a public spectacle. And if I don't testify, then he likely goes free. The other witnesses, the men who attacked you here, their testimony helps. But yours is the heart of the case." Ivy looked down at Hope, sleeping peacefully. "What about my daughter? Will they drag her into this?" "They'll certainly mention her, probably suggest she's not Morrison's child at all." Nolan's fists clenched. "That's a damn lie." "Of course it is," Harrington agreed, but truth and what a clever lawyer can make a jury believe are often different things. "There's more," Cord said quietly. "Morrison's friends haven't given up. We've heard rumors of plans to prevent your testimony. More hired guns? Possibly. Or they might try legal maneuvers. Have you declared mentally incompetent? Claim the birth affected your mind?" He paused. "Or they might go after your father." Ivy's head snapped up. "What do you mean?" "Jeremiah Boone has made enemies over the years. Morrison's allies are digging into his past, looking for leverage. If they find something..." They'll use it to silence me. Ivy's voice was steady, but Nolan saw her hands tremble. Threaten to destroy him unless I recant. It's been done before, Harrington admitted. So what do you want from us? Murphy asked. Why come all this way to tell us what we already know, that powerful men don't like being challenged? Because, Cord said, we want to offer Miss Boone protection. Federal protection. Now we'll move her to Santa Fe. Keep her under guard until the trial. No, Ivy's response was immediate. I won't be caged again. It's for your safety. My safety? She laughed bitterly. Where was federal concern for my safety when Morrison attacked me? Where was it when his men came to kill my baby? Miss Boone, I'll testify, but I'll do it on my terms. From here. The prosecutors exchanged glances. That's inadvisable. Nevertheless, Cord studied her for a long moment. You're as stubborn as your father. I'll take that as a compliment. What if we compromise? Nolan suggested. Post guards here. Let Miss Boone stay where she's comfortable, but with protection. I suppose that could work, Harrington said reluctantly. Though our resources are limited, then supplement them. Ivy stood, hope still sleeping in her arms. My father has men, good men, who've been appalled by what Morrison did. They'll help. You've spoken to your father? No, but I know him. He'll want to make this right. After the federal men left, promising to send guards within the week. Ivy sagged against the porch railing. The strong facade cracked, showing the frightened young woman beneath. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. You can, Nolan said firmly. You've already survived worse. Have I? They'll tear me apart in that courtroom, make me relive every moment, every detail. She shuddered. And everyone will be watching, judging. Let them judge. You know the truth. The truth. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. The truth is that I was stupid. I knew Morrison made me uncomfortable, but I danced with him anyway because it was polite, because refusing a federal judge would have embarrassed Father. And that doesn't make what he did your fault. No, but they'll make it seem that way. She looked at Hope. What will I tell her when she's older? That her father was a monster? That she was conceived in violence? You'll tell her she was loved, Murphy said from the doorway. That her mother was brave enough to stand up to powerful men. That she's alive because people fought for her. A pretty word, but words don't change facts. No, Nolan agreed, but they can shape how we see those facts. That evening, a single rider approached. Nolan recognized him, one of Boone's men, young Tom Garrett. He dismounted nervously, hat in hand. Miss Ivy, your father sent me. Did he? Her voice was carefully neutral. Yes, ma'am. He wants to help. With the trial. He's offering men, money, whatever you need. But not himself? Tom shifted uncomfortably. He's not sure you'd want to see him. He's right. Ivy turned to go inside, then paused. Tell him thank you, I'll take the help. But I'm not ready to forgive. Not yet. Yes, ma'am. He said to tell you he understands. As Tom rode away, Nolan found Ivy in the kitchen, mechanically preparing supper. You'll have to face him eventually. I know. She sliced potatoes with unnecessary force. But not yet. Not until after the trial. I can only handle so much at once. The next days brought a parade of preparations. Federal guards arrived, 2 young deputies who seemed more interested in Murphy's war stories than watching for threats. Boone's men came too, setting up a perimeter, their loyalty to their boss's daughter overriding any lingering doubts. Harrington returned with a court reporter to take Ivy's preliminary statement. She told her story clearly, without tears, though Nolan saw the cost in her white knuckles and rigid posture. When they asked for details, what Morrison had said, How he'd held her, she answered with clinical detachment. "You're doing very well," Harrington said when they finished. "But in court, the defense will push harder. They'll try to make you emotional, to confuse you. Let them try." But that night, Nolan heard her crying. He found her in Hope's room, formerly a storage closet, now a nursery, rocking her daughter and sobbing quietly. "I'm scared," she admitted when she saw him. "What if I break down? What if I can't find the words?" "Then you take a breath and try again." He sat beside her on the floor. "You're the strongest person I know. Ivy Boone." "I don't feel strong. I feel hollow, like Morrison took something from me that I'll never get back. He took your innocence, your trust, but not your strength, and that's all you—" She leaned against his shoulder, Hope between them. "Why are you so good to us, really?" "You know why. Because you're a good man? Because you make me want to be one." She turned to look at him then, something shifting in her eyes. "Nolan." "Not yet," he said gently. "After the trial, when you're healed, when you're sure it's not just gratitude, and if it's not, then we'll see what happens." A commotion outside broke the moment. Shouts, horses, the sound of weapons being drawn. Nolan grabbed his rifle, pushing Ivy behind him. "Stay with Hope." He found chaos in the yard. A dozen riders faced off against the guards, torches making the night bright as day. At their head sat Judge Hamilton Morrison himself, out on bail, dressed in his finest clothes. "I've come to see my daughter," he announced. "Like hell," one of Boone's men snarled. "I have a legal right. That child is my blood." Nolan stepped forward. "You have no rights here, Morrison." "Ah, the noble rancher." Morrison's smile was cold. "Tell me, Briggs, what interest do you have in my family affairs?" "The interest of any decent man in protecting women and children." "From their own father?" "You're no father. You're a criminal awaiting trial." Morrison's composure cracked. "I made one mistake, one moment of weakness. Should I lose everything because of it?" "Yes," Ivy said from the doorway. She held Hope, the baby awake and fussing. "You should lose everything, like I did. Ivy." Morrison's voice changed, became almost pleading. "You don't understand. If you testify, it won't just destroy me. My wife, my legitimate children, they'll all suffer. Is that what you want?" "What I want." Ivy stepped into the light, and Nolan saw Morrison flinch at the sight of her, thin, pale, but unbowed. "I wanted to dance at my first harvest ball without being attacked. I wanted to tell my father the truth without being called a liar. I wanted to carry my child without fearing for our lives. I never meant—" "You never meant to get caught." Ivy's voice cut like a blade. "Look at her, Morrison. Look at your daughter." She held Hope up, and for a moment, Morrison's mask slipped entirely. Nolan saw recognition there, perhaps even regret. Then the judge's face hardened again. "That child is nothing to me." "Good, then stay away from her. You'll regret this, girl, and when they're done with you in court, you'll wish you'd taken my offer to disappear." "Is that a threat?" Marshal Cord emerged from the shadows, hand on his gun. "Because threatening a federal witness is a serious crime." Morrison's men shifted nervously. They'd come expecting intimidation, not federal marshals. "Ain't no threat, Marshal. Just a prediction." Morrison turned his horse. "Enjoy your righteousness while you can. Miss Boone, it won't last." As the riders departed, Ivy sagged against the doorframe. Nolan caught her and Hope both, supporting them. "You did well," he said. "Did I? He's right about one thing. His family will suffer. His wife, his children. They're innocent in this. That's not your responsibility, isn't it?" She looked down at Hope. "Every choice we make ripples outward. Morrison chose to attack me. I'm choosing to seek justice. Both choices have consequences for others. The difference, Murphy said, is that your choice is righteous. His was evil. Righteousness, Ivy tested the word. Such a heavy thing to carry. They went inside, the guards resuming their posts. But Nolan couldn't shake the feeling that Morrison's visit was just the beginning. The man had too much to lose to give up easily. That night, unable to sleep, Nolan found himself in the barn, brushing Buttercup and thinking. The mare nickered softly, sensing his unease. "A getting complicated girl," he murmured. "Came here for a simple life. Now look at us. Who couldn't sleep either?" He turned to find Ivy in the doorway, wrapped in a shawl. "Hope's finally down. Thought I'd check on you." "I'm fine." "Liar," but she smiled. "We're a pair, aren't we? Both running from failed lives, finding each other in this mess. Maybe that's how it works. Maybe the broken people find each other. And then what? Then they try to build something new, something better." She moved closer, running her hand along Buttercup's neck. "I never thanked you properly for that first night. You could have turned me away." "No, I couldn't." "Because you're honorable. Because I recognize something in you, a fellow survivor. Is that what we are, survivors? For now, maybe someday we'll be more." "I'd like that," she said softly. "Someday." They stood together in comfortable silence, two damaged souls finding solace in shared understanding. Outside, guards kept watch. In Santa Fe, lawyers prepared their strategies. And somewhere, a federal judge schemed to save his reputation. But in that moment, in a lamplit barn on a ranch bought for $1, none of that mattered. There was only the present, the warm breath of horses, the scent of hay, and the promise of tomorrow. The trial would come. The truth would be told. Justice might even prevail. But first, they had to survive the next 2 weeks. The morning of the trial dawned clear and cold, frost glittering on the sagebrush like scattered diamonds. Ivy stood at her window, watching the sun paint the desert in shades of gold and rose. In 3 hours, they would leave for Santa Fe. In 5, she would face Morrison in court. "You should eat something," Nolan said from the doorway, holding a plate of biscuits and gravy. "I can't. My stomach feels like it's full of rattlesnakes." "Try anyway. You'll need your strength." She took a biscuit, breaking it into small pieces. "What if I can't do it? What if I see him and just freeze? Then you take a breath and remember why you're there. For hope, for yourself, for every woman who's been silenced." A knock interrupted them. Marshal Cord entered, his face grim. "We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "In Morrison's lawyers filed a motion. They're claiming you're mentally unfit to testify. Say the trauma of childbirth has affected your mind." Ivy's hands clenched. "Of course they are. There's more. They've got a doctor willing to testify to that effect. Dr. Marcus Fitzgerald from Denver. Apparently he's examined you. I've never met any Dr. Fitzgerald. They claim he observed you from afar during your father's Christmas party last year. Says he noted signs of hysteria and nervous exhaustion." "That's absurd," Nolan said. "You can't diagnose someone from across a ballroom." "You and I know that, but Fitzgerald has credentials and Morrison has influence." Cord paused. "There's going to be a competency hearing before the trial. You'll need to prove you're of sound mind." Ivy laughed, a bitter sound. "So I have to prove I'm sane before I can testify that I was assaulted? How convenient for Morrison. The prosecutor's bringing in our own doctor to examine you, Dr. Sarah Wheaton from Albuquerque. She's one of the few female physicians in the territory." "A woman doctor?" Ivy's eyes widened. "I didn't know such things existed." "Dr. Wheaton's a pioneer, and she's testified in cases like this before. She knows how to handle hostile lawyers." Within an hour, Dr. Wheaton arrived, a woman in her 40s with steel-gray hair and kind eyes behind wire spectacles. She examined Ivy thoroughly, asking questions about her health, her state of mind, her memories of the assault. "You're remarkably composed for someone who's been through such trauma," Dr. Wheaton observed. "I've had to be. That's exactly what they'll use against you, a truly traumatized woman. They'll argue. Would be more emotional, more broken, so I'm too sane to be believed? In their twisted logic, yes." The doctor made notes. "Tell me, Miss Boone, do you have nightmares?" "Every night." "Difficulty trusting men?" "Most of them." "Moments of panic when touched unexpectedly?" "Yes." "Good. Those are normal responses to trauma. Don't hide them in court. The defense wants to paint you as either hysterical or calculating. Show them you're neither. You're human." As they prepared to leave, Jeremiah Boone arrived with an escort of his best men. Father and daughter stood facing each other in the yard, neither seeming to know what to say. "Ivy," he began. "Mr. Boone," she replied formally. Pain flashed across his weathered face. "I deserve that. Deserve worse. But I'm here now. My men will see you safely to Santa Fe." "Thank you. I'll be in the courtroom, if you'll allow it." She studied him for a long moment. "It's a public trial. You can sit where you please. That's not what I'm asking." "I know." She adjusted hope in her arms. "I'm not ready to forgive you, Father. Maybe I never will be, but I'm glad you'll be there." It was enough. Boone nodded, blinking rapidly, and turned to organize his men. The ride to Santa Fe took 3 hours, their convoy drawing stairs as it passed, federal marshals, hired guards, and some of the most dangerous men in the territory, all protecting one young woman and her baby. The courthouse loomed before them, a squat adobe building that seemed to crouch beneath the weight of the law. Crowds had gathered, drawn by scandal and the promise of seeing the mighty brought low. "Vultures," Murphy muttered. "Let them look," Ivy said, chin high. "I have nothing to be ashamed of." Inside, the competency hearing convened in a small chamber. Judge Cornelius Blackwood presiding, brought in from Texas to ensure impartiality. Morrison sat with his lawyers, avoiding Ivy's gaze. She recognized one of them, Theodore Ashton, famous for getting wealthy men acquitted of crimes everyone knew they'd committed. "At this hearing," Judge Blackwood announced, "we'll determine whether Miss Ivy Boone is mentally competent to provide testimony in the matter of Territory versus Morrison." Ashton rose immediately. "Your Honor, we contend that Miss Boone suffers from hysteria brought on by the trauma of unwed motherhood. Her accusations are the delusions of a disturbed mind." "Objection," Prosecutor Harrington countered. "The defense is attempting to try the case before it's begun." "I'll allow some latitude," Blackwood decided, "but keep it relevant to the matter of competency. Mr. Ashton." Dr. Fitzgerald took the stand first, pompous and certain. He spoke of female troubles and nervous exhaustion, using medical terms to dress up prejudice. "In your professional opinion," Ashton asked, "is Miss Boone capable of distinguishing truth from fantasy?" "Her highly doubtful. Women in her condition often create elaborate stories to explain their shame." "And what condition is that?" "Unwed motherhood, of course. The shame drives them to madness." Ivy's nails dug into her palms, but she kept her expression neutral. Dr. Wheaton's testimony provided a sharp contrast. She dismantled Fitzgerald's theories with surgical precision, explaining that trauma responses were normal, not signs of madness. "Miss Boone shows remarkable clarity about events," she stated. "Her memories are consistent, detailed, and show none of the confusion associated with delusion." "But surely," Ashton pressed, A woman who shoots men while recovering from childbirth must be somewhat unbalanced? On the contrary, defending oneself and one's child shows strong survival instincts and clear thinking. Finally, Ivy herself was called. She took the stand carefully, hope left in Nolan's capable hands. Ashton approached like a predator stalking wounded prey. Miss Boone, do you often have fantasies? No more than anyone else. But you admit to having them? I imagine everyone does. I once fantasized about being a teacher. Is that madness? Snickers from the gallery. Ashton's face darkened. Let's discuss the night in question. You claim Judge Morrison assaulted you in your father's garden? I don't claim it. It happened. Yet you told no one for weeks. I was frightened, ashamed. Morrison threatened my family. Or perhaps nothing happened, and you invented the story later to explain your pregnancy. No. You were at a party, drinking punch, dancing. Perhaps your memories are confused. I had 1 glass of punch. I danced 3 dances before Morrison cornered me. I remember every detail. Every detail. Ashton smiled. Then tell us, what song was the orchestra playing when you went to the garden? Ivy closed her eyes, forcing herself back to that night. The Blue Danube Waltz. They'd just started the 2nd movement. You seem very certain. I am. It was my mother's favorite. She died when I was 12. Hearing it always makes me think of her. I went to the garden too. Her voice caught. To be closer to her memory. Morrison followed me. The courtroom fell silent. Even Ashton seemed momentarily thrown by the raw honesty in her voice. Miss Boone, Judge Blackwood asked gently, do you understand the difference between truth and falsehood? Yes, Your Honor. Do you understand the gravity of the accusations you're making? I understand that my words could destroy a man's career and reputation, but they're still the truth. Do you have any doubt about what happened to you? No, Your Honor, I wish I did. It would be easier to doubt than to know. Blackwood nodded slowly. I've heard enough. This court finds Miss Ivy Boone fully competent to testify. The trial will proceed as scheduled this afternoon. Relief flooded through Ivy, but it was short-lived. The real battle was yet to come. During the lunch recess, she found a quiet corner to nurse hope. Nolan stood guard, keeping the curious at bay. You did well, he said. That was just the beginning. You're ready for this, Ivy. She looked up at him. What if I'm not? What if I break down when I have to describe details? Then you break down, and then you keep going, and that's what courage is. I don't feel courageous. I feel terrified. Good means you understand what you're up against, but you're doing it anyway. Marshal Cord approached. The main courtroom is packed, standing room only. Morrison's wife is here. Ivy's heart sank. Oh, she's sitting with the prosecution. What? Apparently, she's had enough of his behavior. This wasn't his first indiscretion, just his worst. When court reconvened, Ivy took the witness stand again. The larger courtroom felt oppressive, hundreds of eyes upon her. She found Nolan's face in the crowd, drew strength from his steady presence. Harrington led her through her testimony gently but thoroughly. She told everything: the assault, Morrison's threats, her father's rejection, the attempts on her life. Her voice broke when describing the birth, how she'd nearly died bringing hope into the world while men waited outside to kill them both. Did Judge Morrison ever acknowledge paternity? Harrington asked. Yes, the night before this trial, he came to the ranch. He called Hope his daughter, then said she meant nothing to him. Objection, Ashton called. Hearsay. Multiple witnesses heard the statement, Harrington countered. We can call them if needed. I'll allow it, Blackwood ruled. The cross-examination was brutal. Ashton attacked from every angle, Her reputation, her choices, her family's conflicts with Morrison over land deals. Isn't it true your father owed Judge Morrison money? I wouldn't know. Father didn't discuss business with me. But if he did owe money, it would provide motive for false accusations, wouldn't it? Objection, Harrington said, on speculation. Sustained. Ashton changed tactics. You danced with Judge Morrison that night? One dance. It would have been rude to refuse. Did you flirt with him? No. Smile at him? Politely, as I did with all my father's guests. Some might interpret politeness as encouragement. Some might, they'd be wrong. You wore your mother's pearls? Yes. An expensive necklace for a young woman. Some might say provocative. Ivy's temper finally sparked. Only someone looking for provocation would find it in pearls. I wore them to honor my mother's memory, not to entice men old enough to be my father. Yet here we are. Yes, Ivy said firmly. Here we are. Because Hamilton Morrison couldn't control himself. Because he thought his position made him untouchable. Because when I said no, he didn't listen. You claim you said no? I said no. I said stop. I said please. None of it mattered. Yet you didn't scream? His hand was over my mouth. You didn't fight? He was twice my size. I tried. Not hard enough, apparently. The cruelty of the statement hung in the air. Several women in the gallery gasped. Even Judge Blackwood looked troubled. Mr. Ashton, he warned. But the damage was done. Ivy felt exposed, flayed open for public consumption. Tears ran down her face, but she didn't move to wipe them away. Are you suggesting, she asked quietly, that unless a woman fights to the death, she consented? I'm suggesting that your story has holes. The only hole is in your conscience. The words came out stronger than she'd intended. I was 17 years old. Morrison was a federal judge. He held me down and took what he wanted, and you stand there implying I should have died rather than survive it? Miss Boone? No. You've asked your questions. Here's my answer. I survived. I carried his child. I nearly died bringing her into the world. And now I'm here, telling the truth, while you try to make me the criminal. She looked directly at Morrison. I did nothing wrong. He did, and everyone in this courtroom knows it. The silence that followed was profound. Ashton seemed to realize he'd pushed too far. Even Morrison's supporters looked uncomfortable. No further questions, Ashton said. As Ivy stepped down, shaking with reaction, she caught sight of Morrison's wife. The woman nodded once, a gesture of acknowledgement and perhaps solidarity. Other witnesses followed, Murphy describing the attacks, Marshal Baker detailing the investigation, the surviving gunman confirming Morrison had hired them. Each testimony built upon the last, creating a damning picture. Then, unexpectedly, Jeremiah Boone took the stand. I failed my daughter, he said simply. I chose to believe a man I respected over my own blood. I let pride and politics blind me to the truth. If this court has any justice, it won't make the same mistake. By the time closing arguments began, the outcome seemed clear. But Ivy had learned not to trust in certainties. The jury had been deliberating for 3 hours. 3 hours that felt like 3 days to Ivy as she paced the small antechamber, Hope fussing in her arms. Through the window, she could see the crowd still gathered outside, waiting for justice or scandal, perhaps both. They're taking too long, she fretted. What if... Don't, Nolan interrupted gently, and don't torture yourself with what-ifs. But Morrison has friends, influence. What if they got to the jury? A martial court has had them sequestered since yesterday. No one's gotten to anyone. A commotion outside made them all turn. Through the courthouse windows, They could see riders approaching fast, too fast for casual business. Nolan's hand went to his gun. "Stay here," he ordered, moving toward the door. But Ivy recognized the lead rider. That's Samuel Morrison, Hamilton's eldest son. The young man, perhaps 25, with his father's strong features but softer eyes, dismounted and pushed through the crowd. Marshal Cord intercepted him at the courthouse steps. "I need to speak to Miss Boone," Samuel said loud enough for his voice to carry on. "Please, it's urgent." "The trial's in deliberation," Cord replied. "No one sees the witnesses." "Then I'll say it here, where everyone can hear." Samuel turned to face the crowd. "My father is guilty. I know because I've found proof." The crowd erupted. Reporters pushed forward, shouting questions. Cord grabbed Samuel's arm, hauling him inside before a riot could start. Minutes later, they were all crowded in Judge Blackwood's chambers. Prosecutors, defense lawyers, Ivy, and Samuel Morrison, who clutched a leather portfolio like a lifeline. "This is highly irregular," Ashton protested. "The jury is deliberating." "The jury can continue deliberating," Blackwood said sharply. "But if there's new evidence, I need to hear it. Mr. Morrison, explain yourself." Samuel's hands shook as he opened the portfolio. "After Miss Boone's testimony, I went to my father's study. I knew she was telling the truth. My father has always had wandering hands, especially when he drinks." "Samuel," Morrison warned from his seat, "don't do this." "I have to." Samuel pulled out papers. "These are letters between my father and other men of influence. They discuss Miss Boone, the pregnancy, plans to silence her." He handed them to the judge, who read with darkening expression. "This one," Samuel continued, voice breaking, "is dated 2 weeks after the assault. Father writes about the Boone problem and how it needs to be handled delicately. He mentions paying Cyrus Thorne for services rendered." "Those could mean anything," Ashton argued desperately. "This one's clearer." Samuel held up another letter. "Written to Judge Carlton in Denver. Father asks him to recommend a doctor who might declare Miss Boone mentally unfit. Dr. Fitzgerald's name is mentioned." Ivy felt the room spin. The conspiracy went deeper than she'd imagined. "And this," Samuel's voice dropped to a whisper, "a telegram to an associate in Mexico, arranging passage for packages that need disposing, dated the week Miss Boone gave birth." "My God," Harrington breathed. "He was planning to traffic them across the border." "Hey, Samuel, please." Morrison's commanding presence had crumbled. "You're destroying our family." "No, Father, you destroyed it. I'm trying to save what's left of our honor." Samuel turned to Ivy. "I'm sorry for everything, for not speaking up sooner, for letting him terrorize you." "Why now?" Ivy asked quietly. "Why come forward now?" "Because I have a sister, 13 years old. And when I looked at her this morning, I realized it could have been her. In a few years, at some party, with some other powerful man who thinks he's untouchable." His voice cracked. "I couldn't live with that possibility." Judge Blackwood was already writing. "Bailiff, recall the jury. They need to hear this." "Your Honor," Ashton protested, "this is prejudicial. This is evidence of conspiracy and attempted murder. Mr. Ashton, sit down." As they filed back into the courtroom, Ivy caught Samuel's arm. "This took courage." "It took too long," he replied. "But my mother said..." "She said you were brave enough to speak the truth. The least I could do was support it." The jury, looking confused and curious, filed back in. Blackwood explained the situation, then allowed Samuel to present his evidence. The letters were damning, each one another nail in Morrison's coffin. "The defense may cross-examine," Blackwood said when Samuel finished. Ashton stood slowly, clearly grasping for strategy. Mr. Morrison, you're betraying your father. I'm telling the truth. You could be disinherited, cut off from the family fortune. I'd rather be poor with a clean conscience than rich with blood on my hands. And these letters could be forgeries. They're in my father's hand, his personal stationery, his seal. Samuel met Ashton's gaze steadily. Would you like me to provide samples for comparison? Ashton sat down, defeated. The jury retired again, but not for long. Within 30 minutes, they were back. Have you reached a verdict? Blackwood asked. We have, Your Honor. The foreman, a weathered rancher, stood. On the charge of assault, we find the defendant, Hamilton Morrison, guilty. Ivy sagged against Nolan, relief making her knees weak. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of corruption of office, we find the defendant guilty. The litany continued, guilty on all counts. Morrison sat frozen, as if unable to comprehend his fall. Hamilton Morrison, Judge Blackwood intoned, you are hereby sentenced to 25 years in the territorial prison. Your judgeship is revoked. Your properties will be seized to pay restitution to your victim. And may God have mercy on your soul, because this court has none. The gavel fell with finality. Chaos erupted. Reporters rushed for the doors, eager to spread the news. Morrison was led away in shackles, looking suddenly old and frail. His wife approached Ivy in the confusion. I'm sorry, Mrs. Morrison said simply. I should have stopped him years ago. You couldn't have known. I knew. Every woman in his orbit knew to be careful. We protected ourselves and left others vulnerable. She touched Hope's tiny hand. I'll ensure she's provided for. It's the least I can do. Outside, the crowd had grown. As Ivy emerged, a cheer went up, not universal but strong. Women reached out to touch her hand, to offer blessings. Men tipped their hats respectfully. Hey, you did it, someone called out. You brought him down. But Ivy felt no triumph, only exhaustion. She'd won, but at such cost. Her reputation was in tatters, her family name forever linked to scandal, and Hope would grow up knowing her father was a monster. Let's go home, she said to Nolan. But leaving proved difficult. Jeremiah Boone stood by their wagon, hat in hand. Father and daughter faced each other in the afternoon sun. I'm proud of you, he said roughly. Your mother would be too. Don't, Ivy's voice was sharp. Don't invoke her now. She would have believed me from the start. You're right. She would have. He cleared his throat. I've been a fool, Ivy. A prideful, stubborn fool. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope. Someday, you might let me know my granddaughter. Ivy studied him for a long moment, the powerful Jeremiah Boone, brought low by his own blindness. Maybe. Someday. But not yet. I understand. He produced an envelope. This is for you. The deed to the northern pastures. Good grazing land. And there's money in the bank in your name. For Hope's education. I don't want your money. It's not mine. It's yours. Your mother's dowry that I've been holding. She'd want you to have it. Ivy took the envelope reluctantly. This doesn't fix things between us. I know, but it's a start. He turned to Nolan. Take care of them. I will. As they rode out of Santa Fe, their smaller convoy quiet after the morning's chaos, Ivy finally allowed herself to cry. Not the desperate tears of fear or pain, but the cleansing tears of release. It's over, she whispered. This part is, Nolan agreed. Now comes the rest. The rest? Be living, healing, building something new. They reached the ranch as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. The place looked different somehow, still rough, still needing work, but no longer a hideout. Now it was a home. Murphy met them at the door. Heard the news already. Telegraph's been burning up. Morrison guilty on all counts. How? Samuel Morrison stopped at the telegraph office. Wanted the truth spread fast and wide. Murphy grinned. Also said to tell you he's studying law. Plans to be the kind of judge his father should have been. That night, after Hope was fed and sleeping, Ivy found Nolan on the porch watching the stars. I never thanked you properly, she said, settling beside him. For that first night, for every night since. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. She took his hand. You gave me something I'd lost. Faith that there were still good men in the world. Ivy, I know what you said. Wait until after the trial, then until I was sure. She squeezed his fingers. I'm sure. Nolan, this isn't gratitude or proximity or whatever else you're worried about. I see you. The man who bought a broken ranch and defended a broken woman and never asked for anything in return. You're not broken. Neither are you. They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, watching the stars wheel overhead. In the house, Hope made small sounds in her sleep. Somewhere in the desert, a coyote called to its pack. What happens now? Nolan asked eventually. Now we fix up this ranch, raise Hope, maybe raise some cattle too. She paused. Together, if you'll have us. Is that a proposal, Miss Boone? It's an offer of partnership, Mr. Briggs. The rest we can figure out as we go. He lifted their joined hands, kissing her knuckles gently. Then I accept. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Too much had happened, too much pain endured, for simple happily ever after. But it was a beginning, a chance to build something new from the ashes of what had been destroyed. Inside, Hope began to cry. Ivy rose to tend her, then paused. And Nolan, that $1 you paid for this place, best investment you ever made. No, he said, following her inside. The best investment was stopping to help a scared girl in a stable. Everything good came from that. As Ivy lifted Hope, soothing her with soft words and gentle rocking, Nolan lit the lamps against the gathering dark. The house filled with warm light, pushing back the shadows. Outside, the desert stretched endless and unforgiving. But inside, a new family was taking shape, not bound by blood or law, but by choice and courage, and the radical act of staying when leaving would have been easier. Morrison would serve his time. The scandal would eventually fade. And on a ranch bought for $1, 3 survivors would write a different story. One of healing, of hope, and of love that grew from the rockiest of soil. It wasn't the life any of them had planned. It was better. Because sometimes the best things come from the worst circumstances. Sometimes broken people can build something beautiful. And sometimes, just sometimes, justice and mercy can exist in the same moment, in the same place, in the joining of scarred hands and the crying of a baby named Hope. The stars wheeled on, indifferent to human struggles. But beneath them, in a small ranch house in the New Mexico territory, love was taking root. And that, perhaps, was miracle enough. 3 months had passed since the trial, and the ranch had transformed. What had once been broken fences and sagging buildings now stood straight and strong. The vegetable garden Ivy had planted was beginning to show green shoots, and the small herd of cattle Nolan had purchased grazed in the restored pastures. Hope had grown round and rosy, her dark eyes, Morrison's eyes, though Ivy tried not to think of it, taking in the world with curious intensity. She could hold her head up now, and her laughter filled the house like music. On this particular morning, Ivy was kneading bread dough when she heard riders approaching. Her hands stilled, old fear flickering before she recognized the measured pace. Not threats anymore, just visitors. "Nolan," she called. "I see them." He appeared in the doorway, wiping his hands on a rag. "Looks like Murphy. And someone else?" They watched as Murphy rode up with a woman beside him, young, pretty, with auburn hair escaping from beneath her bonnet. "This is Miss Catherine Walsh," Murphy announced, helping her dismount. "The school teacher I mentioned. She's agreed to come look at the old Peterson place." Catherine smiled, though her eyes were wary. "Mr. Murphy speaks highly of your community, Mrs. Briggs." Ivy didn't correct the assumption about her marital status. It was easier than explaining. "Please call me Ivy. Come in. You must be tired from the ride. Over coffee and fresh biscuits." Catherine's story emerged. She'd come west from Philadelphia after a broken engagement, seeking a fresh start. The territorial government was offering incentives for teachers willing to work in remote areas. "The Peterson place is only 5 miles from here," Murphy explained. "Adobe house, good well, needs work, but it's solid." "I don't mind work," Catherine said. "I mind loneliness more." "You wouldn't be alone," Ivy assured her. "There are several families within riding distance, the Herreras, the Carsons, us. We look after each other out here." "And we could use a school," Nolan added. "Hope won't be the only child needing education. The territory's growing." Catherine's face brightened. "You have a daughter?" 6 months old. Ivy fetched Hope from her cradle. "Would you like to hold her?" The sight of Catherine cooing over the baby while Murphy watched with poorly concealed admiration made Ivy hide a smile. Perhaps the old medic had more than educational interests in mind when he'd sought out a school teacher. After they left to inspect the Peterson property, Ivy and Nolan worked side by side in comfortable rhythm. She in the garden, he repairing the chicken coop. It was a good life, a quiet life, the kind they'd both thought lost to them. "Your letter came while you were with our guests," Nolan said eventually, producing an envelope from his pocket. "From your father?" Ivy's hands stilled on the tomato steak she was setting. "What does he want?" "I don't know. Didn't open it." She took the letter reluctantly, recognizing her father's bold script. Inside, the message was brief. "Ivy, the northern pastures are thriving. Your cattle should do well there. I've taken the liberty of having a small house built on the property, nothing fancy. Just somewhere you could stay when checking the herd. I won't impose myself on you. But if you ever feel ready to talk, I'll be waiting. Your father." "He's building me a house," she said, confused. "Why would he? Oh? He's giving me a way to be independent. If things don't work out here. If I need to leave." She folded the letter carefully. "He's trying to ensure I'll never be trapped again." "Smart man. Are you saying you want me to leave?" "I'm saying your father's learning. Late, but learning." Nolan set down his hammer. "Question is, what do you want?" Before she could answer, they heard horses again. This time, Ivy recognized the lead rider immediately, Samuel Morrison, accompanied by a woman in traveling clothes. "Miss Boone," Samuel called out, dismounting. "I hope we're not intruding." "Not at all." Though Ivy's voice was cautious, the last time Morrison men had come to her home. "This is Miss Elena Vasquez," Samuel said, helping his companion down. "She's a journalist from San Francisco. She's writing about the trial, about what happened after." Elena stepped forward, her dark eyes intelligent and direct. "I want to tell your story properly, Miss Boone. Not the sensationalized version the Eastern papers printed, but the truth, about courage and survival and justice. I've told my story. In court, I don't need to relive it for public entertainment. That's not what this is. Elena's voice was passionate. Do you know how many women have written to the newspapers since your trial? Women with similar stories who never had the courage to speak. You've started something important. Ivy sank onto the porch steps, suddenly tired. I didn't mean to start anything. I just wanted to protect my daughter. The best movements begin that way. Samuel said quietly. My father is in prison because you spoke the truth. But more importantly, other men in power are being more careful. They know now that position doesn't grant immunity. Your father's in prison because he was guilty. Yes, and I'm in law school because you showed me that truth matters more than family loyalty. He paused. I'm also here to give you this. He produced a legal document. My mother has established a trust for hope. It's managed by a board of women. My mother, Mrs. Wheaton, the doctor who testified for you, and 2 others. No man can touch it, not even Hope's future husband. It's hers alone. Ivy's hands trembled as she read the sum. This is too much. It's not enough, but it ensures Hope will have choices, education, property, independence, whatever she needs to write her own story. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about the article, Elena urged. Not for sensation, but for all the women who need to know they're not alone. After the visitors left, Ivy sat on the porch, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. Nolan joined her, Hope in his arms. Eventful day, he observed. Too eventful. She leaned against his shoulder. I just want quiet, peace. Is that so much to ask? You have quiet, you have peace, but you also have influence now, whether you want it or not. I never wanted to be a symbol. I know. He shifted Hope to one arm, wrapping the other around Ivy. But symbols matter. That woman was right. Your story gives others courage. What if I don't want to share it anymore? What if I just want to be Ivy Boone, rancher and mother? Then that's what you be. The world's asked enough of you. They sat quietly as the sky painted itself in desert colors. Hope gurgled happily, reaching for Nolan's shirt buttons. I've been thinking, Ivy said eventually, about what you said months ago, about broken people building something new. What about it? We've built something, haven't we? A life, a family. She took a breath. A future. We have. Then maybe it's time to make it official. She turned to face him. Nolan Briggs, would you marry me? Not because I need protection or respectability, but because I choose you. Because Hope deserves a father who chose her, and you've chosen us every day since we met. Nolan's weathered face transformed with joy. Ivy Boone, I thought you'd never ask. Is that a yes? That's a yes to you, to Hope, to whatever comes next. He kissed her gently. Though folks might talk, the trial's still fresh in people's minds. Let them talk. They'll talk anyway. She smiled. Besides, I have a reputation for causing scandals. Might as well give them a happy one for a change. The wedding took place 2 weeks later. A simple affair at the ranch. Rosa Herrera and her family came, bringing food and music. The Carsons attended, and Catherine Walsh, already settling into the Peterson place, arrived with Murphy, who was clearly smitten. Even Marshall Cord made an appearance and claiming he was just passing through but staying for the dancing. Jeremiah Boone did not attend, though he sent a gift, a pair of matched horses and a note that simply said, For new beginnings. Samuel Morrison served as witness, having become an unexpected friend. You're redeeming our family name, he told Ivy. Every good thing I do as a lawyer will be because you showed me what justice looks like. As the sun set and the guests danced in the yard, Ivy found a moment of stillness. She stood at the edge of the light, Hope sleeping in her arms, watching the celebration. Regrets? Nolan asked, joining her. No, you? Not a one. He wrapped his arms around them both. Though I do wonder what would have happened if I hadn't bought this place, if you'd hidden somewhere else. Then I'd probably be dead, and you'd be a lonely rancher with a dollar ranch. Instead, I'm a married rancher with a dollar ranch, and a wife and a daughter, and more cattle than you know what to do with. The cattle I can handle, it's the women who puzzle me. She laughed, the sound bright in the desert air. Good, keeps you humble. Elena Vasquez approached, notebook in hand but unopened. It's a beautiful wedding, a hopeful ending to a difficult story. It's not an ending, Ivy corrected. It's a beginning. May I quote you on that? Ivy considered. Throughout the evening, women had approached her, ranch wives, the Herrera daughters, even Catherine. Each had whispered their thanks, their own stories, their newfound courage. Yes, she decided, you may write your article, but not about Ivy the victim or Ivy the symbol. Write about all of us, the women who survive, who rebuild, who refuse to be silenced. Write about the men like Nolan who stand with us. Write about justice that comes slow but comes eventually. And hope? Elena asked, glancing at the baby. Especially hope. That's what all of this is about, isn't it? The hope that tomorrow can be better than yesterday. That our daughters won't face what we faced. That speaking truth still matters. Elena smiled. I'll write it true, I promise. As the party wound down and guests departed, Ivy and Nolan sat on their porch, now their porch, officially. Hope slept between them, peaceful and unaware of the journey that had brought them here. What are you thinking? Nolan asked. That a year ago I was a frightened girl dancing at a harvest party. So much has changed. You've changed. We all have. She traced Hope's tiny features. Do you think she'll understand someday? Why her story began the way it did? I think she'll understand that her mother was the bravest woman in the territory. That people fought for her before she could fight for herself. That she was loved from the moment she drew breath. And her father. She'll know Nolan Briggs as her father, the man who chose her, raised her, loved her. Biology doesn't make a parent. Love does. When did you become so wise? Probably when a desperate woman stumbled into my stable and turned my life upside down. They laughed quietly, not wanting to wake Hope. Around them, the ranch settled into nighttime rhythms, horses nickering, chickens roosting, the windmill creaking gently. I love you, Ivy said suddenly. I realized I've never said it, not properly. I love you too, have since that second night when you stood up to Cyrus even though you could barely walk. That was foolish. That was brave. There's a difference. A coyote howled in the distance, answered by another. The sound that had once frightened Ivy now seemed almost comforting. Wild things calling to their kind, surviving against the odds. And Nolan? Thank you for seeing me as more than my circumstances, for giving me space to heal and grow, for loving Hope without reservation. Thank me by being happy, by building this life with me, by letting our story be one of the good ones. Our story, she repeated, tasting the words. I like that. Hope stirred, making small noises. Without discussion, they rose together, carrying her inside to the cradle Nolan had built with his own hands. The house was simple but clean, filled with evidence of their new life, Ivy's books on the shelf. Nolan's rifle by the door. Hope's toys scattered about. As they prepared for bed, Ivy caught sight of herself in the small mirror. The frightened girl from the stable was gone. In her place stood a woman, scarred but strong, wounded but whole. Come to bed, Mrs. Briggs, Nolan called. Tomorrow's a working day, wedding or no wedding. In a moment, she stepped out onto the porch one last time, looking up at the vast canopy of stars. Somewhere out there, other women were fighting their own battles. Other survivors were finding their voices. The world was changing, slowly but surely, and it had started here, on a ranch bought for $1 with a desperate girl and a decent man and a baby named Hope. "Thank you," she whispered to the stars, to fate, to whatever force had guided them through the darkness. Then she went inside, to her husband and daughter and the life they were building together. Outside, the desert bloomed beneath the starlight, beautiful and harsh and enduring, like the people who called it home, like the love that had grown from the rockiest of soil, like hope itself, fragile and fierce and absolutely unstoppable. The stars wheeled on, marking time's passage. But in the small ranch house, time seemed to pause, holding its breath over a family that shouldn't exist but did. And in that improbable existence lay proof of a fundamental truth. Sometimes the worst beginnings lead to the best endings. Sometimes pain births purpose, and sometimes, just sometimes, $1 ranch becomes priceless. The coyotes sang their ancient songs. The wind whispered through the sage, and in a cradle built by loving hands, Hope slept peacefully, dreaming whatever dreams babies dream. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight, all was well. Tonight, the broken had been made whole. Tonight, love was enough,